Before you lies a collection of ancient symbols, carved not by chance but by the slow hands of time and meaning. These are not mere designs etched into stone, they are echoes of human consciousness, fragments of stories whispered across centuries. In every curve and angle hides a pattern older than language itself. So take a moment. Do not analyze. Do not judge. Just breathe, look, and allow your intuition to rest on the symbol that quietly calls to you. Let your eyes soften and your heart take the lead, because what follows is not a lesson, it is a mirror. Psychology often tells us that we build symbols to describe the world, but Jung believed something deeper, that symbols build us. They rise up from the collective unconscious to shape the way we dream, love, and live. Your choice today, the ancient mark that drew your attention, is no accident. It's the psyche reaching outward, choosing the sign that best translates your current story. You may have seen such shapes before on old temples, pottery, or forgotten manuscripts. But here, in this quiet moment, they live again, ready to reveal which archetype breathes most strongly within you. The first symbol looks deceptively simple, a circle enclosing a single point at its center. In many cultures, it represented the sun, eternity, and wholeness. Jung described this pattern as the self, the ultimate image of unity, where the conscious mind meets the unconscious and recognizes itself as part of something vast. If you felt pulled toward this mark, your life may be guided by a deep inner compass. You crave integrity, not perfection, but alignment. Beneath every doubt you carry a subtle knowing that everything you experience is connected. Even your pain, even your joy, even the moments that seem meaningless. The circle speaks of someone who seeks harmony after fragmentation, who may once have been lost and is now learning to gather the scattered parts of themselves. You are likely a mediator, a bridge between extremes. You dislike conflict not because you fear it, but because disconnection wounds you at a cellular level. Yet within this drive for balance lies a quiet challenge, the temptation to dissolve your individuality for the sake of peace. The circle archetype offers unity, yes, but it can also lead to forgetting where you begin and others end. Do you make silence just to keep the harmony? Do you smooth the edges so much that nothing sharp remains to define you? The path for you is not to escape contrast, it is to integrate it. Because the true self, Jung said, isn't the absence of conflict but the dance of opposites finally acknowledged. So when you choose the circle, you are choosing reconciliation. To forgive what divided you, to welcome both your shadow and your light into one luminous whole. The second symbol cuts differently, a triangle pointing upward, its lines firm, almost defiant. Since the dawn of sacred geometry, the triangle has stood for fire, aspiration, and divine will. Warriors, visionaries, and leaders have marked it on armor and altars alike. If your intuition claimed this shape, it may be because you carry within you the archetype of the ruler or the warrior of intention. You are the one who feels restless when life grows aimless, the one who believes in purpose with almost religious devotion. Order comforts you, achievement fuels you. There's likely a fire inside that refuses to go out, even when the world drenches you in doubt. People often misunderstand your intensity, mistaking your direction for dominance, but at your best you lead by example, not control. The upward-pointing triangle is the inner call toward mastery, to sharpen chaos into creativity, to build something lasting out of raw will. But like all symbols, it carries a shadow. Fire that creates can also consume. Sometimes your drive might isolate you, convincing you that worth exists only in victory, that emotion is distraction, that rest equals weakness. The ancient alchemists warned that untempered fire turns gold into ash. So pause, sometimes. Let water cool your flame. Remember that strength expands, it doesn't always ascend. When you allow vulnerability to stand beside ambition, your leadership becomes sacred service rather than mere conquest. Then comes the spiral, the third symbol. It winds outward like breath, endlessly unfolding. Found in fossils, galaxies, and tribal carvings, the spiral represents evolution, life's continuous journey inward and outward. To choose the spiral is to align yourself with transformation. You are the archetypal seeker or alchemist, never content to stay unchanged. You are comfortable in thresholds, perhaps too comfortable. Endings and beginnings feel like home to you. You grow through cycles of shedding, losing, recreating. Others might call you inconsistent or mysterious, but what's really happening is metamorphosis. Every few years, your personality regenerates, usually after pain or revelation. In relationships, you're magnetic because you embody motion. People feel you as possibility. Yet this endless turning can weary even the boldest wanderer. The spiral's danger lies in its seductive uncertainty. The idea that fulfillment always waits in the next transformation, the next insight, the next horizon. Jung might ask, what if the path spirals not outward but inward? What if the treasure you're chasing has always been at the center, waiting for you to stop spinning long enough to see it? Choosing the spiral means carrying both the gift and burden of curiosity, the call to never stop growing, and the struggle to know when to rest. The fourth mark is older than empires, two intersecting lines forming a balanced cross. Not merely a religious sign, but a primal image of meeting points, sky and earth, life and death, matter and spirit. Those drawn to this symbol often embody the guardian or teacher archetype. You carry gravity, a sense of duty grounded in compassion. People rely on you even when you wish they wouldn't. Somewhere inside you is the conviction that life should make sense, that structure is sanity, that responsibility is love. If this cross caught your gaze, you might be someone who builds frameworks for others to rest upon. Families, systems, institutions, or even inner philosophies stable enough to weather chaos. The beauty of this energy lies in its dependability. The shadow hides in rigidity. Perhaps you felt that the moment you stop holding everyone together, things will collapse. Perhaps you equate surrender with failure. Jung noted that when the archetype of the guardian becomes too strong, it begins to guard against its own growth. So ask yourself, have you mistaken control for care? True guardianship also allows space for renewal. The cross invites balance, equal weight on all directions, equal respect for heaven and earth, logic and feeling, law and grace. To choose it is to declare, I will hold, but I will also release. And finally, the fifth ancient symbol, the open eye, carved within a protective frame. It appears in cultures from Egypt to Mesopotamia, always watching, never sleeping. The eye embodies consciousness itself, the light that exposes truth and banishes ignorance. If you found yourself unable to look away from it, you may carry the archetype of the sage or observer. You live to understand. Questions are your oxygen. You sense patterns beneath chaos, read emotion between words, notice meaning in silence. Your observation grants you wisdom but can also isolate you. When others celebrate the surface, you are already dissecting the depth beneath it. People trust your insight, yet sometimes you struggle to stay present because your mind insists on analysis. The watcher can easily become the judge, the truth seeker can become the cynic. Jung cautioned that intellect unbalanced by empathy risks turning the human soul into a puzzle rather than a mystery. For you, the challenge is to see without detachment, to know without annihilating wonder. The eye promises vision, but remember that awareness without compassion blinds rather than illuminates. Those who embody this symbol are the torchbearers of consciousness, yet they must learn that light means little without warmth. What unites all these symbols is not superiority but expression. Each is a different doorway into psyche, wholeness, will, transformation, stability, and insight. None is better, yet each holds its price. The circle can blur boundaries, the triangle burns if uncontrolled, the spiral forgets to rest, the cross can freeze, the eye can judge. Still, together they form a pentagon of human possibility, the architecture of consciousness seen from 5 angles of eternity. When you made your choice, you participated in an ancient dialogue between conscious and unconscious, self and story. The act of choosing is already meaning made visible. The symbol you picked isn't a prediction, it's a translation, the psyche's way of telling you, this is where you are in the journey of becoming. The circle, the triangle, the spiral, the cross, and the eye, each now speaks, not as geometry, but as an inner voice. When Jung wrote of archetypes, he described them as psychic organs, living patterns that breathe through us. That is precisely what your symbol has begun to do. It acts like an ancient language the soul still remembers. By focusing on it, you unconsciously invite its energy to unfold inside your personal story. So let's wander a bit further into those stories, and listen to how each archetype might move through the landscape of modern life. The circle's soul often appears calm to the world. You may be the one people describe as balanced, collected, or peaceful. Yet behind those tranquil eyes hides a lifetime of subtle storms that taught you the necessity of calm. You may have grown up amid emotional noise, learning early that harmony had to be built, not found. For you, life's work becomes integration, to accept contradiction without being torn by it. You connect easily across differences, friends from every background, conversations that rarely end in conflict. The danger is diffusion, giving so much understanding that you disappear into empathy. The path forward is individuation through wholeness, not erasure. Instead of saying, "I keep the peace," you begin to say, "I am the peace, and even peace has boundaries." Imagine yourself as the circle protecting a flame. The flame flickers only because there's air. Confinement kills it, chaos drowns it. Balance does not mean stillness. It means rhythm, like the breath, like the heart. Those who chose the triangle live by motion. They sense possibilities long before others do. You might notice that you rarely wait for permission. If something feels right, you build it. Leadership, in your case, isn't about command, it's a reaction to emptiness. When no one seems to take responsibility, you instinctively step forward. Yet with every ascent comes thin air. Your challenge is learning that achievement is not synonymous with value. Sometimes you equate progress with approval, and when applause fades, doubt invades. That is the shadow of the ruler archetype. Believing love must be earned through excellence. If you listen closely, though, the true essence of the triangle is aspiration with direction. Its three sides mirror will, vision, and purpose. Remove any one, and the figure collapses. So examine them. Does your will still serve your heart? Does your vision include the well-being of others? Does your purpose expand or confine you? Only when all three meet at the apex does your fire become illumination instead of obsession. The spiral, restless companion of seekers, speaks of rebirth. You may recognize yourself in constant transitions, career shifts, relocations, spiritual awakenings stacked one atop another like concentric memories. Change feels safer than stagnation because stillness once equaled fear. Perhaps you learned early that to stay was to suffer. So transformation became survival. Yet transformation without destination can exhaust the spirit. The alchemist must sometimes sit with unrefined matter and accept its mess. Your power lies in witnessing process, not hurrying it. Whenever life collapses and begins again, remind yourself, the spiral doesn't escape, it circles toward greater truth. What looks like repetition is actually refinement, each turn closer to center. To live this archetype well, you practice surrender disguised as curiosity. You ask, "What is this moment teaching me?" instead of, "Where is the next ladder?" Progress need not be vertical to be real. To choose the cross is to live between worlds, matter and spirit, faith and doubt, love and duty. You have likely spent years as the stabilizer among friends and family, the one who tidies disasters, organizes chaos, and translates feelings into actions. People trust you because you stand firm, and that reliability itself becomes sacred. Yet every pillar eventually notices the cracks forming within its own base. The more you anchor others, the less you allow yourself to move. Sometimes you envy those who wander freely, who seem uncaring and spontaneous. Remember that the cross's wisdom is intersection. Its virtue is not stoicism but presence. You are at your best when you let those lines breathe, when you remember that sacrifice is not the same as love. The teacher archetype matures only when it allows students to outgrow the classroom. Let go of controlling outcomes, emphasize guidance instead. The structure you crave must remain open enough for miracles to enter. For those who saw the open eye, perception is both gift and torment. You read rooms before entering, comprehend motives unspoken, and often think several layers beneath conversation. Analysis feels effortless. Small talk feels impossible. Because of that, loneliness might be a familiar texture. Others sense your depth but may not know how to reach it comfortably. In every era, the eye carried both protection and revelation. It saves from danger but also exposes what was hidden. In you, that energy manifests as relentless honesty. The question is, do you use insight as compassion or as armor? Many who see too clearly forget to feel. Knowledge becomes a wall instead of a bridge. Your growth lies in translating awareness into empathy. When vision stops judging and starts embracing, wisdom turns luminous. You are here not just to know but to illuminate meaning gently for those still in the dark. Now step back from the symbols for a moment and notice how they form a mandala. 5 forces balancing each other. Wholeness, determination, transformation, grounding, and insight. In Jungian thought, such a pattern reflects the psyche's attempt at equilibrium. When one archetype dominates too long, another emerges to restore symmetry. The circle births the triangle when stillness needs passion. The triangle softens into spiral when ambition burns too hot. The spiral seeks cross when change must root. The cross opens its eye when stability requires awareness. The eye completes the circle when wisdom finally turns back into unity. You are never only one. Your life, like everyone's, moves through these shapes repeatedly, a living mosaic of symbolic seasons. Consider how this pattern plays out in your story. Perhaps you once lived as the triangle, driven, certain, and after collapse found yourself spiraling through loss. Maybe, recently, the cross appeared, stable job, predictable routines, the comforting tyranny of security. Each phase offers precisely the energy the psyche needs next. That is the quiet genius of the unconscious. It arranges our fascinations long before we can rationalize them. Why did you select that symbol today and not another? Because the soul speaks in relevance, not randomness. The mark you chose describes this chapter of your evolution, the lesson currently whispering between the lines of your daily life. Every archetype also carries an element of the collective. When you meditate on the circle, you touch the memory of countless monks tracing mandalas across temples. When you hold the triangle in your mind, you echo builders lifting stone pyramids toward the heavens. When the spiral dances in you, you mirror stars spinning and shells unfolding. The cross binds you to ancient priests mapping the cosmos, while the eye connects you to every artist who ever painted perception as light itself. Through symbolic resonance, you remember you are not an island of psychology, you are civilization dreaming through flesh. That recognition alone can relieve a loneliness you barely name. But how does one translate that into modern reality filled with deadlines, phone pings, and crowded thoughts? The secret lies in small awarenesses. When facing conflict at work, notice whether your inner triangle takes over, forcing direction where dialogue might suffice. When exhausted and craving solitude, see the shadow of the circle calling for restoration. When life feels uprooted, invoke the cross by grounding routine. The psyche always offers a balancing symbol. You need only listen for which one rises. These patterns aren't cages, they are navigation tools. When Jung explored how symbols shape the psyche, he noted that every archetypal image hides a shadow, the unacknowledged impulse that keeps the symbol alive. To truly understand the mark that chose you, you must travel into its dimmer corridors. Illumination is never the absence of darkness, it is the art of walking through it with open eyes. If you are drawn to the circle, your gentleness and balance can quietly protect an old wound, the fear of fragmentation. Somewhere, long ago, maybe family or circumstance trained you to mediate conflict before it began. The role became instinct, peacekeeping turned into identity. You learned early that love arrived only when everything felt calm. Yet all real life trembles, storms, tempests, unpredictable tides. When you avoid discord, you deny the very rhythm that gave the circle meaning. Healing for you lies in sacred friction. Learn to let discomfort hum without silencing it. When you allow yourself imperfection, you discover a grace sturdier than serenity. The most profound symmetry is the one that includes chaos as part of the pattern. For those governed by the triangle, the shadow speaks in secret exhaustion. Leadership feels second nature, but beneath confidence hides loneliness. Ambition isolates, control breeds vigilance. You rarely rest because rest resembles surrender, and surrender once meant losing ground you fought hard to claim. The deeper struggle is worthiness, the quiet suspicion that without producing, directing, or achieving, you might fade into irrelevance. Yet genuine authority is transparent. It leads without the fear of vanishing. To heal, you must redefine power as presence. When you inhabit silence without measuring it, you reclaim your own humanity. Remember, the apex of the triangle points upward not to dominate but to channel. Transform drive into devotion, outcomes into offerings. The spiral hides a subtler paradox. You pride yourself on flexibility, on seeking more, feeling more, achieving metamorphosis after every fire. But relentless change often conceals avoidance. Somewhere, deep underneath the elegant motion, lives an untouched grief. Perhaps each new phase allowed you to leave that grief unopened. The psyche, merciful and cunning, disguises its pain as progress until we are ready to rest. Your lesson is stillness, learning that staying in one emotional season doesn't imprison you, it teaches you depth. When a relationship, place, or project begins to bore you, pause before fleeing to the next adventure. Ask, what if this monotony is the soil of meaning? The spiral's secret is that eternity isn't reached by distance, it's found by depth. For the cross archetype, shadow appears through self-sacrifice that borders self-erasure. Duty becomes refuge. Giving replaces feeling. You may believe your strength exists for the sake of others alone, that exhaustion equals virtue. It doesn't. True service sustains both giver and receiver. Beneath the Savior's impulse hides fear. If I stop carrying the world, no one will carry me. But the cross's sacred geometry insists on intersection, not hierarchy. Every horizontal action of care must meet a vertical movement of spirit, receiving as much as giving, accepting as much as guiding. Let yourself be taught again, even by those you think you mentor. Relinquish the illusion that love must be earned through effort. Its purest form arrives unrequested. The I archetype bears brilliant intelligence shadowed by overdetachment. Observation can become surveillance. Curiosity can turn to analysis that strips warmth from experience. Many who bear this symbol once coped with unpredictability by predicting it, a childhood defense honed into genius. Yet life refuses full prediction. Healing begins when you allow mystery its sacred space. The lesson for the watcher: let go of the microscope sometimes, use the naked gaze. Feel without dissecting. Knowledge without wonder starves the soul. Let intuition sometimes outrun evidence. When awareness joins vulnerability, seeing becomes communion rather than control. Together, these shadows construct the underworld of the psyche, the territory Jung called the night sea journey. Every hero or heroine of myth descended before they rose. The same principle applies to the modern mind. The symbol you selected isn't demanding perfection, it is inviting wholeness. Wholeness includes bruise, doubt, contradiction. Symbols evolve through your response to them, like mirrors changing shape as you breathe in front of them. Consider now how opposites cooperate. The circle's calm needs the triangle's daring. The triangle's focus needs the spiral's surrender. The spiral's dreaming requires the cross's discipline. The cross's gravity relies on the eye's illumination. The eye's vast perception melts into the circle's unity, and the wheel turns again. This interdependence forms what ancient mystics called the quinta essentia, the fifth essence beyond the four elements. It is the state where all energies coexist without annihilating each other. Jung might call it the self fully seen. To touch that state, cultivate small daily rituals that echo your chosen symbol. For the circle, draw boundaries and keep them sacred, a few minutes of quiet each dawn. For the triangle, delegate one task and trust it will still prosper. For the spiral, finish a project before starting the next. Let completion taste like joy, not confinement. For the cross, receive help without apology, even in trivial forms. For the eye, practice presence without judgment. Describe a moment aloud using senses instead of analysis. Such acts may appear simple, but simplicity has always been power disguised as gentleness. As you weave these gestures into ordinary life, something quietly reorganizes within you. You begin to notice synchronicities, symbols reappearing in random designs, dreams offering geometry in strange light, choices aligning with old myths. The unconscious loves confirmation. It speaks in repetition until the conscious admits it's listening. Treat those echoes not as coincidence but as conversation. They mark integration, the psyche and world acknowledging they are reflections of one dance. If you ever feel skeptical, that too belongs to the process. Jung insisted that doubt is an instrument of individuation. Blind belief only replaces awareness with trance. Rather than asking, "Is this real?" ask, "Why does it resonate?" The answer you feel rather than think will always be truer. The symbol doesn't predict your future, it participates in creating it. Behind all these insights hides the collective heartbeat. Humanity has never ceased to carve and color its inner sky onto stone, cloth, screen, or tattoo. Every line we draw is an attempt to remember where we came from. When you chose your ancient symbol, you joined that lineage. Someone 1,000 years from now might hold your same type of mind, see the same pattern, feel the same pull, and in that moment, you will be present again, across centuries, as part of their unconscious inheritance. This is how symbols live. they reincarnate through recognition. When eyes meet archetype, creation repeats itself. That mystical reciprocity explains why such tests soothe us. They whisper, "You are part of something immeasurable, yet intimate." The analytic brain may dismiss it as projection. The heart calls it belonging. Look back on the shape you selected. Can you sense its motion inside you? The circle breathing, the triangle blazing, the spiral turning, the cross grounding, the eye shining? That sensation is the remembered body of your soul. Symbols are energy condensed into imagery. By contemplating them, you activate that energy internally. Modern neuroscience might call it pattern association. Jung would simply smile and say, "The psyche never lost its poetry." Once the shadow has been seen, a quiet turning begins, the transformation from awareness into integration. Jung called it the sacred marriage, a union of opposing forces within. The same principle pulses through your chosen symbol. Each line or curve becomes both wound and medicine. To integrate is not to perfect yourself. It is to accept your contradictions so completely that they stop fighting for attention. If you chose the circle, you have learned serenity and its hidden burden. Now maturity invites you to expand that serenity into participation. Harmony must become dynamic. Perhaps you once mistook detachment for calm. Now your evolution demands engagement. Bring your steadiness into movement. Use your capacity for balance to mediate not only emotions but also ideas, communities, projects. The matured circle stands in the center of the storm and listens, not to fix but to understand. When you express opinions, speak them from that grounded compassion instead of fear of conflict. The world is hungry for this quality of centered voices, those who can disagree without disconnection. In doing so, you transform peace from avoidance into artistry. Those whose hearts resonate with the triangle move toward a gentler kind of power. The goal is no longer conquest but coherence, aligning ambition with authenticity. You may sense an inner shift. Deadlines matter less than direction, applause less than purpose. You begin delegating not from fatigue but from trust, because genuine leadership multiplies energy instead of hoarding it. Compassion becomes your new metric of success. The mature triangle resembles a mountain, steadfast yet covered with green life. Its peak touches the sky, but birds still rest upon it. When you speak with authority tempered by humanity, others follow naturally, not out of fear but respect. This evolution turns control into guidance, performance into presence, and dominance into service. The spiral evolves when curiosity steadies into devotion. Growth shifts from expansion to depth. Suddenly you no longer crave the next thing with the same urgency. You feel drawn to master one craft, to live one love fully, to stay long enough to see transformation through rather than just initiate it. The matured spiral learns patience, not as resignation but as participation in the slow alchemy of life. You discover that not every metamorphosis requires destruction. Some happen softly, like dawn replacing night without a single explosion of color. In this stage, your creativity refines into wisdom. You become a mentor in disguise. Those around you witness how fluidity can coexist with commitment. For the cross archetype, integration means allowing humanity within sanctity. The early cross carried duty as a creed. The refined cross carries joy as devotion. You begin to notice how offering can feel lighter when rooted in choice instead of obligation. Perhaps you take a day to do nothing productive and realize the world continues spinning, unfazed. This revelation borders on holiness. That grace survives whether or not you keep vigil. Participation in life becomes prayer. You remain dependable but release martyrdom. People sense this and mirror your ease. The structures you build finally breathe. Your faith, whatever its form, shifts from rigid belief toward living relationship with mystery. You start to meet heaven not above, but within every ordinary act. For the eye, awakening takes the shape of humility before wonder. The matured observer realizes that seeing deeply means loving deeply. Rather than cataloging truth, you start embodying it. Where once you might have analyzed a sunset spectrum, now you simply stand beneath it and let silence translate color into feeling. You teach by presence, not explanation. The intellect becomes translucent, allowing intuition and empathy to shine through. You discover the courage to say, "I don't know," and find beauty in that admission. Others feel safe in your company because your awareness isn't sharp anymore. It's soft, like light diffused through stained glass. The seer becomes the healer. As these maturations unfold, the 5 archetypes begin to converse inside you. Balance without purpose, circle without triangle, dulls into stagnation, purpose without balance, triangle without circle, combusts into burnout. Curiosity without anchor, spiral without cross, disperses, stability without renewal, cross without spiral, petrifies. Perception without warmth, eye without circle, alienates. Unity without insight, circle without eye, forgets evolution. Recognize that every quality longs for its complement. Wholeness is interaction, not isolation. When one symbol dominates, summon its opposite. If you feel control tightening, visualize the spiral's release. If you drift too much, invoke the cross's gravity. Archetypes act like inner guardians keeping each other honest. Integration also extends outward. Relationships often mirror our chosen pattern. The partner of the circle might radiate triangle energy, driving, direction craving, providing motion for the one who brings calm. The spiral may fall in love with the cross, hungry for security yet afraid of confinement, dancing between attraction and tension until both learn balance. The eye often becomes confidant to all, but needs the warmth of the circle to stop endless analysis. These pairings aren't accidents. They are symphonies composed by the unconscious to help each note discover its harmony. Every friction you experience with another person is the language of symbols arguing toward balance. Integration requires embodiment. The psyche transforms only when insight moves through the body. So let your daily life echo your geometry. Circular souls might practice mindful breathing, visualizing completion with every exhale. Triangular spirits can pace their goals to a rhythm, projects begun and closed with symbolic ceremonies. Spiral minds benefit from creative routines that mark cycles, journaling at the start and end of each moon phase, for instance. Cross archetypes could keep a sacred calendar that honors both work and rest days equally. Eyes, the observers, might cultivate sensory grounding, smell, taste, touch, gentle anchors that prevent observation from floating into abstraction. Symbolic practice transforms understanding into living reality. Eventually, repetition of such acts rewires perception. You begin to sense subtle correspondences, geometry shimmering at the edge of dream, intuition offering messages through shape instead of words. The inner and outer worlds synchronize. Problems start appearing as patterns rather than obstacles. You notice when a triangle phase arrives demanding initiative, or when a circle season arrives asking for pause. Life ceases to feel random. It becomes rhythmic, musical, meaningful. That awareness doesn't erase suffering, but it contextualizes it. Pain becomes a passageway rather than a punishment. In this integrated state, people often report serenity mixed with alertness, a feeling of quiet readiness. It's not complacency, it's recognition that every event, pleasant or painful, has symbolic correspondence guiding individuation. If a relationship collapses, perhaps the spiral calls for renewal. If anxiety rises, maybe the triangle's fire has grown unchecked. Using symbols this way is psychological art, not superstition. You learn to dialogue with experience rather than react to it. The deeper aim behind such understanding is autonomy of the soul. Jung wrote that when consciousness aligns with the symbolic world, the individual no longer feels tossed by fate. They cooperate with it. This cooperation doesn't mean control. It means participation in the myth of your own life. You become both storyteller and character, aware that every crisis, coincidence, and dream carries construction material for the self. Wholeness turns out not to be a reward to chase, but a language to remember. Notice, too, how gratitude begins to replace judgment. You thank even the painful chapters, because they introduced dimensions you would have ignored otherwise. The triangle thanks its burnout for teaching surrender. The circle thanks conflict for teaching expression. The spiral thanks exhaustion for revealing stillness. The cross thanks loss for revealing grace. The eye thanks confusion for reawakening wonder. Gratitude finalizes integration. It seals recognition into wisdom. At this point, the 5 ancient symbols have become more than designs on a page. They have become languages through which your psyche speaks. You have walked through their light and shadow, their call to maturity and their dance with one another. What remains is the integration of the integrator, the recognition that the observer and the observed, the chooser and the chosen, are one continuous thread. Stand again in your mind before those age-worn images. The circle gleams softly endless. The triangle burns with its inner fire, the spiral hums in quiet rotation, the cross stands still, dignified, the eye glows as if it sees you back. Notice how none of them competes with the others. Each completes the rest. This harmony is the clearest expression of Jung's idea of individuation, the process by which the fragments within the self recognize their shared origin. The personality becomes an orchestra, not a battlefield. You do not discard contradictions, you conduct them. Imagine now how that realization might reshape the way you live tomorrow. The circle's calm might help you listen before reacting. The triangle's courage could lend you strength to voice a long-suppressed truth. The spiral's fluidity may allow you to adapt when uncertainty arrives. The cross would steady your commitments, ensuring dreams translate into deeds. The eye would help you perceive nuance, the tender motivations beneath clumsy words, the divine detail within the ordinary morning light. Each symbol, lived consciously, becomes a practice in wholeness. Integration, though, doesn't mean a lifetime free of fragmentation. The human heart remains porous. Old fears and instincts still visit. But you will know the terrain now. When despair arrives, you can hear which shape it speaks. When joy floods, you can name the pattern guiding it. Awareness turns chaos into conversation. You stop fighting the storm and start listening to its grammar. That is what perception truly grants. Not control, but comprehension. The circle gently reminds you that wholeness isn't an endpoint, it's a rhythm. There will be times you lose peace again, times when the external world jangles too loudly. In those hours, draw a small circle on paper or even trace one in the air. Whisper inwardly, "All parts of me are welcome." Feel how that sentence softens judgment. Within that round boundary, everything belongs, the anger, the gratitude, the doubt. That belonging is the heartbeat of every healing. The triangle tells you that purpose is holy even when invisible. When you doubt your direction, focus on the top point of that triangle in your imagination. Let it remind you that aspiration is meant to serve meaning, not image. You don't need constant motion. Clarity itself can be an act of leadership. Offer your progress as prayer, but remember that stillness is also service. The spiral teaches that life renews itself without command. When endings frighten you, visualize that slow coil unfolding outward. Each turn outward contains the memory of the inward path. Nothing is wasted. Growth need not dramatize itself to be real. If grief visits, do not rush to get over it. Move through it slowly until you can see the light curve around it. Grief, too, is just evolution textured by love. The cross continues its quiet vigil over structure and faith. You can invoke it not as burden but as reminder. The horizontal line holds what is, the vertical line invites what could be. Their meeting is the present moment, your only point of power. When you feel pulled toward nostalgia or anxiety, return to that intersection. It exists in the simple breathing now. Allow it to remind you that creation always happens in the current instant, never in the memory or the projection. And for those guided by the eye, perspective never ends, it expands. There will always be something more to learn, another pattern beneath the last. Let that thrill you rather than exhaust you. Remember that knowledge without wonder fossilizes into certainty, and certainty is the blindness of light. When you look now, look lovingly. Let what you perceive alter you, not because you are unanchored but because the world is an endless mirror reflecting deeper and deeper reflections of self. In truth, all these inner practices are preparation for one realization: everything communicates. Symbols, people, coincidences, all speak the same language once the heart quiets enough to listen. This listening is the art of living symbolically. It means recognizing that every encounter on the street, every delay, every unexpected affection or frustration carries a whisper from the unconscious guiding you back toward balance. Superstition separates humans from life. Symbolism reunites them. If you were to ask Jung what the end of such work looks like, he might say there is no final step, only widening. Individuation is not about becoming extraordinary. It is about becoming completely, tenderly human. The archetypes are not gods demanding worship. They are facets of a single awareness learning to know itself through you. When you honor them, you honor the psyche's poetry, its need to turn experience into story. And what is your life if not the world's oldest story told once more, freshly through your eyes? Let this understanding seep into how you treat others. When you meet a stranger brimming with ambition, See the triangle that drives them, but also sense the quiet fear beneath. When someone hesitates to speak, imagine their circle protecting fragile inner peace. When a friend endlessly changes plans, recognize the spiral of transformation still turning inside them. When a loved one clings to certainty, see the cross offering safety after chaos. And when you encounter a mind that analyzes everything, including you, recognize the I simply seeking to feel safe through comprehension. Seeing people symbolically replaces judgment with empathy. It turns perception into compassion. You may notice now that the symbols begin to appear even when you don't look for them. Patterns in architecture, jewelry, dreams. They aren't chasing you, they're accompanying you. Each glimpse is a reminder that the unconscious stays fluent and affectionate, still guiding, still curious. To live with symbols is to converse with life itself, to understand that meaning is not something you invent but something you remember. Perhaps, after all this reflection, a single question remains. What will you do with it? If nothing else, let it reaffirm trust in your own intuition. That first instant when one shape quietly called your name, that wasn't random. It was your deeper mind choosing the image that best described the chapter you stand in now. Trust that instinct again tomorrow, and the day after. Let intuition, not logic alone, steer you toward the experiences waiting to evolve you next. Because the heart of this exploration was never about ancient symbols or even Jung's theories. It has always been about you, the timeless intelligence wearing a human story for a while, trying to remember its wholeness. The stone, the color, the mark, they are reminders only. The real test was never which symbol you picked, but how deeply you were willing to see yourself reflected in what you chose. So carry this awareness like a quiet flame. Let it guide without fanaticism, shine without noise. When days grow complicated, recall the 5 shapes and the balance they promise. When peace feels far, breathe a smooth circle. When courage falters, imagine the glowing triangle rising. When change intimidates, trace the spiral slowly until it reveals continuity. When rigidity traps you, let the cross loosen into open arms. And when confusion blinds you, rest beneath the watchful eye of consciousness until clarity dawns again. In this way, you begin to live what Jung called the myth you are living. You turn life from chronology into meaning, from endurance into art. And someday, when another soul stumbles upon these same symbols, your recognition will echo through them too, the unconscious remembering itself once more through human choice. Until then, stay curious, stay kind, and stay awake to the languages that move beneath reason. Every line you notice, every color that finds you, every symbol that stirs emotion is the psyche, whispering, "You are not lost. You are becoming whole, as you have been since the beginning."